What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe for another action figure review, and today we'll be taking a look at the brand new Mezco 112 Collective Classic Spider-Man figure. And this is a figure that I'm super excited about. He's probably my most anticipated figure of 2018, and he's been delayed forever. I think he originally went up for pre-order like last year in January, so it's probably over a year ago that you were able to pre-order him on the Mezco website. I pre-ordered it back then, and since then I've canceled it and I got it somewhere else. But yeah, I can't believe he's been delayed for that long, but I'm so excited to finally have him in my hands, and he's a really awesome figure. I don't think he disappointed, but let's get right into it, starting with the packaging here. So for the most part with the packaging, it's pretty much the same thing. It kind of seems like they did a little bit more on here. Like you could see, you got the spider and you got some pretty cool artwork. Most of the time with Mezco figures, you kind of just get like a solid color with the logo of the character in the center, but they kind of went and did a little bit more here. And then you have up here it says Spider-Man, down here it says Marvel, over there it says 112 Collective. And then on the back you get a look at some promo pictures that we've seen 100 times before. And it's cool that these are on here. It shows the accessories and all that cool stuff. But I really wish that they found a way to incorporate the artwork into the boxes like they used to. They used to have really cool artwork on these things. And now with this style, this Spider-Man figure comes in the same style of packaging as Wolverine and Deadpool, where the slip cover just comes off and then you're able to see the figure on the inside here. You can see all of his accessories, but it doesn't have the flip open cover like a book anymore, so they have nowhere to put artwork. I kind of feel that they should put the artwork in the back instead of the same promo pictures that we've seen a bunch of times. But anyways, the packaging is cool. It's very collector friendly, all that good stuff. Now let's get right into the figure. And now for the articulation on Spider-Man, he pretty much has the standard Mezco setup. And so that means that his head can go side to side, and it could almost tilt all the way to the side because you have movement at where the head and the neck meet and where the neck and the torso meet. So there's a really nice amount of movement here at the head and the neck area. Kind of get it to rotate around. And yeah, it's really good using both of those joints. And you could get him to look all the way up. You could get him to bury his chin into his chest so that he could look all the way down. And then for his torso, he has the two joints. He has the mid-torso joint and then a joint at the waist. And using both of those, you could get him to tilt to the side both ways. And then you could get him to twist. And then you could kind of get it to rotate around. And you could get him to bend back to about there. A really nice amount. Check that out. And I know a lot of people were concerned with the amount of crunch that he was going to have, but I think that the ab crunch here came out pretty decent. Check that out. It's crunching forward a really nice amount. And then let's see here for his arms, he doesn't have the butterfly shoulder that a lot of Mezco figures have. So I thought that's kind of strange because you would think for Spider-Man that you'd want that. But even though he doesn't, you could still kind of get his arms in front of him. See, check that out. That's really not too bad. So you could get some cool swinging poses and stuff or whatever it is that you want to do. Let's bring both of these forward so we can see how they both look. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's too bad. I definitely would have liked if they included the butterfly joint, but I'm not too mad. Check that out. I think that's pretty good. And then you can bring his arms all the way up without his uniform hindering that too much. And you could bring them all the way to the back. Same thing. Kind of almost come all the way up here. You really don't want to force this stuff too much. And then his arms could come out to the side. And then he has upper bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. He has a swivel at the wrist and a hinge at the wrist. And then now for his legs, a lot of people were asking me if he could do the splits, and I'd say that yes, he can. Can't get his legs to really go out flat, but I think they go out enough. Check that out. I think that's pretty good. And then his legs can come forward a really nice amount too. Check that out. He could kick forward. You could even bring them up a little bit more if you kind of bring them to the side. So that's good. And then he has the upper thigh swivel, and it could go back to about there, not very much. But yeah, upper thigh swivel, double jointed knees. And then now for the point in the articulation that everybody has been waiting for, and that is the ankles. And I think that they really improved on the ankles when you compare him to Miles Morales. Check that out. I know some people are going to say they could be better, and I would say that they're probably not as good as Deathstroke's or even the Brown Wolverine, but they are pretty good. Check them out. I think that's good. They definitely rock a really nice amount. I'd say they could be better, but I'm not mad at all how they came out, because I was really scared when I got the Miles Morales. I really didn't want the classic Spider-Man to fall victim to the same problem with the ankles, and I don't think he did, so I'm very happy with it. Check that out. And then you could get them to, you know, swivel to the side, and they come to the front to about there, and then you can point them up to about there. And you know, I'm sure that if you want to pop his feet off, you can modify it a little bit to get a little bit more movement out of his ankles, but honestly I really don't think you need to. I think the ankles are good. I think they're fine. I'm sure some people will complain, but I mean, look at it. What's there really to complain about? I think it hits the poses that you want him to. His feet aren't quite flat, but it's, you know, it's enough to make it work. So check that out. Not too mad at that at all. So yeah, very happy with the articulation on Spider-Man. And as far as posing goes, I don't think that you're going to be able to get him into that deep McFarlane style crouch that you always like to put Spider-Man in, or that I always like to put Spider-Man in. But I do think, I mean, you could get close, you know, but it's not quite there. It's not like a deep crouch, but I think he still looks good. And there are definitely a lot of other classic Spider-Man poses that you can get out of him. So I don't think, you know, the fact that you can't get him to crouch should ruin it for you, because I think you could definitely get him in some other cool Spider-Man poses. Check it out there. You could get him into a swinging pose and stuff. Get both of his legs way up. You know, I think you could definitely work with him. He's not going to be as posable as like Revoltech or Marvel Legends or something, or Figure Arts, but I mean, he's pretty good. Check him out. Yeah, pretty happy with his ability to pose. Again, I really didn't set myself up to be like disappointed with the amount of posing you could get out of him. I wasn't expecting to get Revoltech level of posing. I just wanted some really good, you know, some decent to good posing abilities, and then a nice looking figure, and I think we got that here. But check that out. You're able to get some. I kind of wanted to take a minute to pose them and mess with them a little bit. Yeah, you could definitely get him in some cool, like, jumping, flying kind of poses. I mean, swinging kind of poses. Cool. Check that out. And, you know, the people out there are better posers than I am, so I'm sure you could get him into some even better poses. But I think the capabilities are there, so I think people will be happy with it. And for the accessories, he pretty much comes with all the same things that the Miles Morales Spider-Man came with, except for Peter Parker here comes with an extra head. Unfortunately, he doesn't come with an unmasked Peter Parker head. That would have been awesome, but let's get right into the accessories here, starting off with the hands. First off, he comes with a pair of fists, and then he comes with a pair of thwip web-slinging hands, and then he has a pair of open kind of crawling hands, and then he has some hands that he could use to hold onto his webs. And then he comes with a couple different web accessories, some bigger ones, some smaller ones, and then he comes with one that has like a bendy wire in it. And then he comes with two different heads. The first head, to me, just kind of feels like a generic Spider-Man, like a cool looking, you know, classic Spider-Man. And then this other head seems really more specific to Steve Ditko's artwork. So that's very awesome that they included that with like the eyes that are a little bit more closed. It definitely screams like old, like first appearance Spider-Man. And then as always with Mezco, you get the Mezco stand, and I really like this one. I like this old school kind of simple spider that they have here. It really reminds me of the animated series Spider-Man, and then the blue here matches the figure really well. It's like a darker blue. But yeah, you know, with this stand you have the peg that you could stand the figure on, or you can pop the peg out using the back of the arm, the articulated arm that it comes with. I always use these to pop them out. Sometimes it's a little bit hard, and there we go. Once you get that out, you can stick that in there, and then you could pose Spider-Man on there if you'd like. And here he is pegged onto the stand, and he sits on here really good. The peg is actually really tight, so you don't have to worry about him falling down. You could even get him up onto one leg and don't really have to worry about him falling down if you balance him right. Check that out. So that peg, and then here he is on the articulated flight stand, and I think that looks really cool. You got a lot of nice options with this thing here. And then he comes with this cool magnet that's really strong. So if you're using this, you don't really have to worry about it falling down or anything. So check that out, how strong it is. And that's really cool. And it's pretty much just like the stand, where it has these kind of arms that grab the figure, and they hold on tight. So this is a really cool little thing. And yeah, it's a very strong magnet, so that's probably how I'll display them on that magnet. So I really like that a lot. So for size comparisons, I got a lot of requests, so we're just gonna go crazy with it. Starting off here with Spider-Man next to the Mezco Tiger Stripe Wolverine and the Mezco Punisher. And in my opinion, he could probably be a little bit shorter, but for the most part, I think that he's pretty good for scale with other Mezco figures. And here he is next to the Mezco Captain America and Mezco Deadpool. And here he is next to the Mezco Daredevil and the Figure Arts Donatello. And then here he is next to the Marvel Select Spectacular Spider-Man and the Mafex Homecoming Suit Spider-Man. And here he is next to the Mezco Dark Knight Returns Batman and Mezco Deathstroke. And then here he is next to the Revoltech Spider-Man and the Hasbro re-release of the Toy Biz McFarlane Spider-Man. And here he is next to the Marvel Legends Venom and Marvel Legends Carnage. And I think most people will be happy to see that Venom is a lot bigger than him. So even though this Spider-Man won't fit in with a lot of your Marvel Legends, I think he kind of fits in pretty good with Venom. And then here he is next to the Marvel Legends Kraven and Marvel Legends Jackal. And now here he is next to the Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure Sandman and the Marvel Legends Green Goblin from Hasbro. And then here he is next to the Marvel Legends Pizza Spider-Man and Marvel Legends Ultimate Spider-Man. And he does look like he's a little bit taller than Pizza Spider-Man. And last but not least, here he is next to the Marvel Select Rhino and Marvel Select Lizard. And I think he looks really good next to the both of them. I did want to compare him to the Marvel Select Venom and Marvel Select Carnage, but I didn't have them handy, so I had to compare him to these two. But I think he will work pretty good with your Spider-Man Marvel Select villains. And now here's a look at Peter Parker next to the Miles Morales Spider-Man. And as far as I can tell, they pretty much have the same body except for the lower legs and the forearms. But aside from that, almost everything is the same. And I know that a lot of people were really upset with how tall Miles Morales was. I was too. There's no way that this character should be this tall. But I think that this height kind of works for Peter Parker. I know that there's a lot of versions where he's younger, you know, like in the old comic books and then in the Ultimate stuff. But there's also a lot of versions of Peter Parker where he's like, you know, in his 20s and gonna marry Mary Jane and all this kind of stuff. So to me, like he's not always a young kid. So this body works just fine for me, I think. You know, he isn't very tall. He's kind of like the same height as Captain America, and I think that's fine. So I totally get why it doesn't work for Miles Morales. I agree, it doesn't work for him. He should be young, because as far as I know, Miles is always young in the comic books. And, you know, he hasn't been around as long as Peter Parker. But Peter Parker, you know, he's been young, he's been older, and all this stuff. So I think this body's perfectly fine. And, yeah, I'm really happy with it. Because for me, my version of Spider-Man has always been Spider-Man from the late 80s and the 90s comics and the animated series. And in the animated series, I think he was in college. I can't even remember, but he kind of came off as a grown man to me. So I'm perfectly fine with this body for Spider-Man. I don't think that he's too tall at all. But as for the differences in the figures, I think that the material that they used on Miles here it feels silkier. I know that's funny to say, but it feels silkier. This doesn't feel as soft. I know that doesn't really matter, but it's just something to note. And then also the way they did the neckline was a little different. On Miles, it's just kind of cut, and then they have it looks like they have the rubber so it doesn't fray. On Peter, it's kind of tucked into where the neck joint is. So I kind of feel like if you're moving the neck around that you could damage that material, or it could eventually tear or something, because it's just kind of tucked where the neck joint is, and when you move his head, it kind of rubs against like the torso here. For Miles, you don't have that problem, but I don't know if they could have done that here, because it would have looked funny with the neckline similar to Miles with the web pattern here. But yeah, these two figures have a lot of similarities. Like the stitching pattern is the same. It comes along here and then kind of around like that. It doesn't go down the back like a lot of Mezco figures. So I do like that, because then a lot of the stitching is kind of hidden. So that's good for both of these figures. But yeah, these are both really cool. And one thing I always disliked about Miles Morales is the way that the cloth covers the whole foot. You don't have that problem with Peter Parker. So, you know, that's good. And, you know, I think that actually, when I have these figures next to each other, it kind of seems that like Peter Parker's a little bit taller, and I think where he's getting some of the height from is the bottom of the shoes, because Miles has like flat feet and Peter has like tennis shoes on, so it seems like he's a little bit taller, just slightly. But I'll be happy with that. I don't think that Peter Parker is out of scale or anything, but Miles definitely is. But even still, you know, when you're posing these figures in crazy like web slinging poses, it almost doesn't matter. So I mean, it does matter. He should be appropriately sized, but you could kind of fudge it with some clever posing. So it's very cool to have both of these figures, and hopefully they put out some more versions of Spider-Man aside from the you know, just the movie stuff and the upcoming symbiote Spider. But yeah, look at them. They're both awesome together. Check them out. And one thing that's really unfortunate with this figure is that he didn't come with the unmasked Peter Parker head. So I know a lot of people were curious if the Marvel Legends head will fit on there from the 2-pack, the Homecoming 2-pack that comes along with Iron Man. I don't have that 2-pack, but I do have the bearded Peter Parker head from the Cosmic Spider-Man. So I think that that's around the same size. And it does kind of look cool on there. I think scale-wise it kind of works. It maybe looks, actually kind of looks a little bit big. That's kind of strange. Yeah, it looks a little bit big, but it doesn't even fit on there. It kind of just hangs out, so you'd have to modify it anyways. Maybe if you lift it, it'll look a little bit more natural. But yeah, I'm not too sure if this head is the same size as the one that I mentioned from the 2-pack. I believe it is, so let me know if it's not. But yeah, that's all I have. I don't have that other unmasked head, but I do have the Marvel Select Peter Parker head, and again, that's kind of big, and you'd have to modify it to fit it anyways. But I think, I mean, no, it's too big. I think either way it's too big. But that's a look at that there. And here's a closer look at the details on the figure. And I think for the most part, he looks really nice. I think the web lines are done really good. You can see they're all clean pretty much. The spider logo looks really nice on his chest. Then you have the spider logo on the back. That looks really cool. And I thought the logo on the back of him was going to be the same as the logo on the box, which is like that more old school kind of look. But I'm okay with this. I think it looks pretty good. And yeah, check him out. He looks really nice. And then his forearms are sculpted. You have some sculpted web work there. I'm not really sure why you know, so much of the forearm is sculpted. I don't know why they didn't just do the same kind of thing they did with Miles Morales, where it was just the, you know, the arm was cloth all the way, and then on the wrist there was like a little rubber lining so it didn't fray. I think they were doing this, you know, this sculpted forearm so that they didn't have a problem with the sleeves getting damaged, but it seems like it worked fine on Miles Morales the way they did it there. So I don't know why they didn't do the same thing over here, but yeah, they decided to go with these sculpted forearms. And then you also have sculpted lower legs. Then you have the shoes that look pretty cool. I know some people don't really like these, but I'm okay with them, and I think they did a really good job sculpting them. You got the sculpted web lines that look nice. And as for this material, it's really stretchy. It doesn't really hinder the articulation at all, as you could see here. But I'd be afraid to leave them in any kind of pose that has any of this creased, because I kind of feel like it could leave permanent creases. And yeah, I think you got to be really careful with this material. I feel like if you mess with it too much, it could eventually flake. Or if you're messing with it in a hot room or something, I feel like it could get sticky. It kind of feels that way because it's kind of like a rubbery. It's not really like the pleather that they use like on Deadpool. It's more like it feels more rubber, but I'm not really quite sure what it is. But it is fine. It looks good, and I think it functions really well, so that's good. And yeah, check him out. He looks really nice. And I don't know if it's the same stuff that's on Miles Morales. I know a lot of people had a problem where on Miles the vinyl was coming up. I don't really see that happening with Spider-Man here. I think this is more, it's kind of fused with the cloth a little bit better, so I really don't think that people are going to have that problem where it starts peeling up. But we'll see. Mine shows no signs of that. Some of the stitching isn't very good on mine, as you could see here. It isn't, I mean, it looks okay, but it kind of bunches up right here. Check that out. That's not too pretty, but it's not horrible. It's just something I noticed. Same thing on this side. The stitching isn't beautiful, but I think it could have been done a little bit better. Kind of bunches up right there too, but it doesn't stand out too much. I'm not too upset about it. But yeah, it's a very cool looking figure. I think they did a really good job. But the only thing is, yeah, you have to be careful with messing with this stuff, because I feel like it could eventually flake or something. So be very careful when posing him and stuff. And one thing you have to be careful about is moving around the neck. I'd suggest when you're moving his head around to do as much movement as you can at the actual headpiece and not so much at the neck, because then it starts to move this cloth around, and I think that could potentially rip it or make it flake. As you could see, like, if you kind of move it around, it's kind of starting to flake. I know that this is a piece that's kind of under the neck anyways, so it's not a big deal. You probably won't see it unless you're kind of looking for it. And you know, it kind of gets hidden under there anyway, so maybe they kind of anticipated that. And you don't see it for the most part, but I'm just saying it can happen, so be very careful when moving the neck around. And here's a closer look at the head sculpt. And at first I kind of wished that the head would just be flat without the sculpted webbing, but I've kind of gotten used to it, and I actually like this head sculpt a lot. And then of course we have the Steve Ditko inspired head sculpt, and this is really good. I think it captures that look perfectly, with the eyes that are a little bit smaller. It's kind of like first appearance Spider-Man or something, and I just like the idea of doing like artist specific things, you know, so I'm very happy with that. It would have been really cool if it came with the McFarlane head too. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Check that out. So overall, I think that Mezco did a really good job all the way around with this figure. I think he looks great, and he could pose pretty much as you need him to. He's not going to pose as good as like a Revoltech figure, but you can get some pretty nice Spider-Man poses out of him, so I'm very happy about that. I do wish that some of the stitching was a little bit cleaner. But aside from that, I don't have any really big gripes. And you know, I do feel like the material can eventually get damaged if you mess with it too much, but that kind of goes without saying. That's pretty much the case with almost all Mezco figures. If you mess with them too much, you're probably going to damage them, so you got to be careful with them just all the way around. And Spider-Man here is no exception, so you got to be careful when you're messing with them. But yeah, he's a really cool figure. I'm super happy with him. And this is a rare case where, for me, I don't really buy multiples of figures, but I might end up buying another Spider-Man figure because I just want to have another one that I know is going to be safe and not get messed up. Kind of just keep it in the closet for a rainy day or whatever, and then just keep this one for posing and messing with, because for me it's really hard to put him down. He's a really fun figure to mess with, so I'm really happy with it. And I really can't wait to get the black suit Spider-Man. I think he's going to be even better, and you're going to have less worry about damaging him because he just pretty much has the white spider logo, and the rest of him is just going to be cloth, you know. So I'm looking forward to picking him up. But so anyways, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And thank you very much. Peace.